From the Dallas On Air studios in beautiful Dallas, Texas, this is Fulfillment here on DallasOnAir.com. And now here are your hosts, the Vegabomber PJ Dunn and the film samurai Carlos Salinas.
Welcome, everybody. I'm glad to see you back. Today we have some extra seats in the room. I'm going to introduce some people to you, but first off, my trusty sidekick, Carl. Say hello to him.
What's up, PJ?
What's up? And also to everyone, good morning to see you all. And today we have a special guest with me today because we are talking about horror. Now you might say, why are we talking about horror in September? Well, that's when most of these movies come out because of October and that whole time frame. So to talk about horror, we have special guest today, Horror Mike. Horror Mike, say hello to the folks.
How's it going, guys? Alums of Vegabomber probably recognize me, so.
That's right. So here we are. It is September. We have a lot of movies that are coming out right now. Some are the horror films, and we're going to talk about that a little later. And of course, we know that this is the time frame that you'll see horror movies come out because of October. So some of the greatest horror films didn't come out in October. They actually came out other parts of the year. Did you ever notice that too as well, Carlos?
Yeah. February sometimes, horror movies, sometimes they come out.
Yeah.
That's usually a dumping ground for what the studios think are not the high profile films. So
Yeah, this is right before the
Great
Academy
stuff.
rush, so everything they want out the door. Everything they want out the door is a tax write-off. There we go.
That's right.
And horror is where they make the money.
That's right. Cheaply made, but lots of box office receipts to go see those cheaper movies. Isn't that what you see, Mike?
Yeah, like I always say, like people always forget if it wasn't for Nightmare on Elm Street, you wouldn't have Lord of the Rings. Like they build up that money.
Yep.
And it gets us our big movies.
That is straight on.
And funny enough, it's just not a recognized prestige genre.
That's right. And yet it still keeps getting better and
starting
better.
to get better. A lot more profiles like The Witch, that Robert Eggers film that came out last year or year before.
Yeah.
Very well made. It's almost like a horror art film, It's
A horror art film.
Elevated horror, Babadook is another good example.
I like The Conjuring too.
Quality, yes.
Conjuring is all
James Wan.
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely getting there. So I'm going to introduce the fans on into this episode to let us know what we're doing today. Also, that man behind the screen that you just hear, that's Kazak. So we want to make sure that we announce him today. And today he's going to give us some of his top 5 horror films as well. So we got a full decked house ready to talk about this. And we'll start with our first segment. As you know, we have people ready for this, and that is the picks of the week. That's right. So first what I'm going to do is I'll give you the 3 movies, and then we'll start to look at the individual movies, and then the crew today will tell us what would be their pick to go to the theater to go see. So this is actually really the pick of the week. So the first film is It Chapter 2. It's a horror thriller film. It's 2 hours and 49 minutes. Director is Andy Muschietti. The second film is Night Hunter. Now, this is an action film, 1 hour and 38 minutes. It's the shortest of these. And it stars Henry Cavill and Ben Kingsley. So this is an interesting film. And then also coming out is a documentary. So we had a lot of documentaries of male rockers. Now here's the first one, and it's going to be Linda Ronstadt, The Sound of My Voice. It's actually it's the shortest. It's 1 hour and 35 minutes. Of course, it stars Linda Ronstadt, Bonnie Raitt, Dolly Parton, and there's some interesting stuff on this. But gentlemen, those are the 3 films. Let's just start with the obvious one, since this is the horror edition. It 2. What do you think of this film? Would this be your pick of the week?
Well, having seen it already, no.
No.
Probably not.
Okay.
Well,
okay. And we'll get into that in Just Seen It for sure, but certainly not that. What else? What do you think?
This is going to be my pick of the week, if only because of the water cooler talk on this one. This one's almost like Avengers Endgame, and like, love it or hate it, you don't want to be left out. Because we for sure have some discussions on it. Because it's nowhere near a perfect horror movie, but it's almost must see this weekend. Sadly, it's a kind of I think I have no evidence of it, but I think a lot of movies may have just moved out of the way of it.
Yeah.
Could be. Yeah.
Wasn't a lot of releases this weekend.
There weren't. In fact, I have just the 3 here, but there was at least 4 or 5 others. 2 of them having to do with auto racing. So, that's always a big box office draw. One was about forget the name of it, but it was about the whole Dale Earnhardt drama against the other, Richard Preddy and a couple other guys. But then the other one actually was going to be interesting. I think it was called Rescue Point or something to the rescue, where it was about two guys who actually wanted to work on the medical team of a pit crew. And they actually talk about some of the grisly stuff that they had to go and pull out of the wreckage of these cars. Because if you remember the early days of the auto racing, pretty much if people hit a wall or something like that, they pretty much died.
They didn't have the harnesses and stuff like they do now, the safety equipment.
Yes, absolutely.
They use real stock cars. That was it.
That's it, yeah. So it sounds like, well, Kazak, what about you? If you had to see any of these three movies this week, which one would you go see?
I'm not a big fan of Linda Ronstadt. So yeah, your chapter 2 is going to get my money, but I've got free passes to the Alamos, so yeah, that's what we're going to use.
I like that. Well, let's talk a little bit about Night Hunter in here. So we decided for all of you out there that certainly It Chapter 2 is going to be it, but probably the surprise pick might be this movie. So Nick, Night Hunter, not Nick, I don't know where I'm getting that from. Night Hunter is this. Think about this. Here's the synopsis of this film. This is a film about a lieutenant, a police force, a former judge, and a vigilante after one guy who's crazy AF. This movie is a combination of Seven and Law-Abiding Citizen, but modernized, very polished. So at an hour and 38 minutes, you've got Henry Cavill here as probably the best version of what should have been Superman, probably here with a beard. This looks really great.
The most handsome man in the world.
Right? And then you have Ben Kingsley, who I think plays the judge in this scene that has his family killed by the psychopath. So if you haven't had a chance, what do you think of these type of films? I mean, I like the fact that Henry Cavill's in the front of this, but what do you think, Carlos, on action?
Yeah, it sounds interesting. It sounds like something, I like crime movies in general, and then when they're trying to catch a clever killer, it's good. As long as it has a good payoff and it's not boring, it doesn't drag, I'll be into it.
So
it's good.
What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I saw the trailer in preparation. It looks really interesting. Now, Carlos's point, I think Henry Cavill is just a good actor. I mean, he has the potential of being the next Tom Cruise if he can just get some really good roles. But this looks good. I was surprised, and to your point, I got vibes of Seven.
Yep.
Really Seven vibes, and I think everyone likes it. You want a really compelling villain because it's even more compelling when the hero overcomes him. Look at Moriarty in Sherlock Holmes. Moriarty wouldn't be anything. Just I'm just a big guy who punches people. No, you want someone. I could argue he's smarter than Sherlock Holmes. That's more compelling when Sherlock Holmes beats him. So I got vibes of Seven when I saw that trailer. It did look good.
Who plays the villain?
This is, I think it's Jeffrey Friedman. No, I'm sorry, that's one of the directors. Actually, that would be no.
Or do they?
It might be like
I've got Ben Kingsley, Stanley Tucci, Nathan Fillion, Minka Kelly, Alexandra the Artist.
Maybe they're keeping
Thanks,
it
Kazak,
for
yeah.
the reveal or something.
Yeah. Now this guy is crazy. Well, I hope to see that he's as good, or if not even better, than Kevin Spacey in Seven. But evidently, he's abducting women, and then he decides after abducting women, that's not as much fun, and he goes after that judge's family. Oh. And in the trailer, if you see it, they show the judge coming home, and his family's floating in the pool dead.
Oh my God.
And that's how he finds out that his family's dead.
Yeah.
So this guy is pretty twisted, and evidently he's got a little Joker in him as well, because there's a moment where Henry Cavill, almost like in Dark Knight, is really just hammering this guy because he can't believe it, how evil this guy is, and he's just taking it. He's just taking it. He's getting slammed.
Like enjoying it, right?
Yeah, he's enjoying it.
It looks good.
Sounds good.
And I think his tagline is TikTok. He keeps telling him TikTok. TikTok, when's the next thing going to go off?
Time's up.
You got to get there. So that's Night Hunter. So that might be the movie. If you have a hangover after IT2, after IT2.
IT2, have you tried turning it off and on?
That's been fun trying to figure out throughout the week. Explain. I'm going to go see It today. It's like, well, what are you going to see? I'm seeing It. I'm going to go see It. It's like,
I thought you've seen it already.
Yeah, I thought you've seen It already.
I don't know. Third base.
Well, now we do have to talk a little bit about this one, and then we'll go to our next segment after that. We have to talk about Linda Ronstadt, The Sound of My Voice. So we know that documentaries have been made pretty cool here by some really great ones that have happened, especially the one on Mr. Rogers, Won't You Be My Neighbor, right? That was a great documentary. And now that rockers are starting to dominate, Rocket Man, Bohemian Rhapsody, we have Linda Ronstadt, which at first, like you, Zach, I thought, Linda Ronstadt, she was great voice and everything, but I never really thought. But if you watch the trailer, what you see is that she's the first woman to have 5 platinum records consecutively in a row. She is the Beyonce back then in the 60s, definitely going into the 70s. I mean, Carlos, what do you know about Linda?
I went through puberty looking at her cover of Hasten Down the Wind, where she's wearing this white dress and you see her. I'm a perv anyway. Sorry. No, I share a birthday with her, interestingly enough. And I think Linda Ronstadt is actually has some Mexican descent,
yes.
right?
She does.
Really? Okay.
I always found her beautiful. I loved her voice. I loved her early records.
Mm-hmm.
Van Halen did a great cover of "You're No Good," which is one of her great songs. She's done some classics, and she set the stage for a lot of up and coming, female artists. They looked at her as an idol and a role model, and kind of followed her lead. And she was one of those performers that also had a very heavy case of stage fright. She hated performing on stage live, but she got through it. I'm sure she's been through the 60s and 70s. There was a lot of drug taking and stuff, and I think she's having some medical problems now.
She is. She is.
Onset dementia, Alzheimer's, but she did that beautiful release of classics that she did. I think she's a great artist.
Yeah. What do you? I know you're younger, Mike, but
I'm only familiar with her classics, so I don't have the attachment that y'all do. Like I also, as sad as it is, I learned more about her from watching that trailer than I knew about her ever. She's just not in my, I guess, wheelhouse, so to speak.
Yeah.
I have a kind of bit. Vega knows this, that I call my Taylor Swift box, where it's things like I can acknowledge their quality, but they're just not for me. I'm just not the target demographic, it feels like sometimes.
Sure.
And while I've liked some of her songs, but that documentary does look interesting. I do love me a good music and true crime. I love those kind of documentaries. So if I'd heard about it, unfortunately, documentaries just get next to no marketing.
It's
this
true.
probably would have been one I would have seen also.
Yeah.
Guys, it looks really interesting. And like I said, I was aware of her, but I didn't know. Y'all knew a lot more about her than I did.
Well, see, the thing is, for the fans out there watching, you have to understand this. For Linda Ronstadt, you're talking about somebody who had pop, country, folk, rock, and Mexican music. In fact, she did a mariachi album, and her record label said, "That's the death of your career. Everybody knows you as the pop icon, the rock icon. There's no way you should do." And she said, "But that's my roots. I have Spanish roots." So they told her not to do it, and she defied them, did it anyway. Now, it didn't do as great as all the other stuff, but it was just the idea that a woman at that time in the 70s could tell you what they wanted to do. Because even Prince couldn't tell his record label what he wanted to do. That's why he changed his name to a symbol, so that he couldn't get sued if he performed and did some other things. People don't kind of know that backhand story. So Linda Ronstadt, not only that, she also had a really good voice, and her songs are songs you will sing again and again and again. If you think about it, like that song "You're No Good," that's a great song. So if you can go back to the Beatles and think some of that's great, just come up to the 70s and here's a woman breaking through in a very male-dominated area, who's super, more than Beyonce ever thought she was going to be. She was doing it back then, and she was crossing all the different musical genres. And she has at least 10 to 15 classic hits.
She's got so many Grammys. She's probably got a wall of Grammys, for sure.
For me to hear about her, I was aware of her. I was like, oh yeah, I know who this is. I know her song, 'cause they play some of them during the trailer. So yeah, I know all these. I just, I don't have any of her albums. I just had.
That's right.
Yeah, I've heard all of her songs. I mean, I've heard them in movies, all kinds of stuff. So,
and see, the only
one of those
reason
acts that's been around forever. You put her in the same category as Dolly Parton, Loretta Lynn.
Correct. Bonnie Raitt.
Exactly. She's one of those who's managed to stand the test of time.
Yep, for sure.
Now, she had to retire in 2011 due to Parkinson's disease. That's what she has now. And so now I think that's another reason why they're telling her story, because it's like, if you're going to talk about Bohemian Rhapsody, if you're going to talk about Elton John, all the UK guys, here's homegrown American girl from Arizona, Tucson, Arizona, who had a ridiculously big voice and knew how to project it, and then could do it in any styling she wanted.
You're seeing a lot of those 70s, 80s guys. They're getting documentaries and movies. Because, I mean, I've been saying this forever. Hollywood, you have all these great stories in people, and you got to tell them. Be it documentary form or, I don't know what you would call it, but like just retelling those stories with actors and stuff. These are great stories, and this one even looked great, and I'm not too familiar with her, and I still want to know more about her. We're watching a trailer. That's how compelling. I'm like, these are interesting people everywhere.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Just gotta focus on them.
That's exactly correct. So for those of you watching out there, we've decided that the pick, whether we're just gritting our teeth or not, is going to probably be It Too. However, check out that Night Hunter deal, and if you like music and if you love music, because music crosses all boundaries, right? That's what Linda Ronstadt showed. Then you might want to check out Linda Ronstadt. So let's move now to the Just Seen It portion. So there's my wiki. So Just Seen It. In case you're just now watching us for the first time, good to see you. Hope you come back. Just Seen It is we now talk about what we've seen since the last time we filmed. And so as a roundtable discussion here, it looks like since we've all seen It Too, we're going to probably go there first. And I guess it makes sense since it's the horror edition anyway today. So Just Seen It, Carlos, we'll kick it off with you. And then I'd love to hear Mike. And I'd also like to hear Kazak's thought on this if he's seen it.
It, Chapter 2. It was an entertaining watch. I didn't like it as much as the first one. I thought the first one was creepier, darker.
100%.
This one had some interesting visuals. I like the whole opening sequence where there was some interesting transitions where, for instance, there's a scene where the camera pans up at night and all of a sudden you see in the night sky these little puzzle piece shapes, and all of a sudden it goes into the next scene. It's an upside down puzzle. Guys putting a piece of puzzle together. So it does some really interesting transitions. The effects, a lot of people had problems with the CGI. I think, CGI was kind of, but I didn't think it was any worse than some of the other big blockbusters I've seen. You know, for instance, like Marvel, Endgame. It's the name of the game now. Everybody has this huge CGI, the special effects, and so forth. So the actors that they picked to be the grown-up versions of the losers were all great. McAvoy, Chastain, Bill Hader is a standout, I think. But also, I thought James Ransom, who played Eddie, I thought he did a really good job. He was fantastic. I liked him just as much as Hader. But yeah, overall, it was a little messy. It was, a little too long. Yeah, some scenes just kind of came off very awkward. There was not a lot of chemistry. But then again, from the story point, there wouldn't be chemistry because these people haven't seen each other for 27 years. So there would be that awkward interaction. And then there's that plot point of they had kind of forgotten everything. So some just didn't come off as genuine dialogue to me. Didn't come off as natural.
Yeah,
that's just me.
That's pretty fair. How about you, Mike?
For me, I agree 100%. To me, the highlight of this film is the cast. I think, like I said, the actor who played Eddie, Bill Hader, plays Richie. They're standouts, but there's not a single bad performance I think I have with it. And I think a lot of that comes down to the director, Andy Muschietti. I think that man's an outstanding director. I just think he might just need some more oversight because I have no evidence, but it felt like the first film was a lot tighter. This one felt so loose, and it felt so all over the place tonally. Because I think that first one is a tight, just well-made film. I mean, it's the film I always recommend if you don't like the horror genre. Try it. It's that crossover film. I wouldn't do it for this one, man. And you know what? You brought this up. It almost, and there's no way he could have seen it, but it almost felt like he watched Avengers Endgame, Andy Muschietti, and then came back. I'm gonna do that in my It movie. That would look cool.
More like the studio said, I want this to be more like Avengers Endgame.
That's right. Just take the snap out so they don't think you're copying it directly.
I mean,
let's make it endless.
Dude,
82 endings.
You feel That's the biggest criticism of this movie. Mm-hmm. You feel that it's 2 hours and 49 minutes.
Yeah, I made the mistake of eating a big steak lunch before the movie, and I actually did nod off like for 2 minutes.
Yeah,
right in the middle of it.
You feel that's a problem. Like they're just things you could just straight cut. And that's a tragedy because, like I said, the actors kill it. Yeah. The director does a lot of good stuff. I agree with you, man. There's some scene transitions and cinematography where I'm like, man, this guy's on another level. Mm-hmm. But he needs someone to back him up just a bit, I think.
Mm-hmm. He does. What do you think, Kazak?
Well, this one's going to get my money.
You haven't seen it yet?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
And like I said, all the reviews that I've been hearing have been the same thing. But like I said, I'm a big fan of... I actually enjoyed the original miniseries because of Tim Curry. And I love what the guy brings to Pennywise.
Yeah, Bill Skarsgård.
Yeah, Bill Skarsgård. Yep. Also, I saw an interesting interview on The Daily Show with Bill Hader, and he's talking about how the actor that played him in the first movie, Finn Wolfhard, actually got him the job. Because they talked to all the younger actors and said, "Who do you want to play you?" And Finn Wolfhard said Bill Hader. Mm-hmm. So so that had to have some voice in it, which is it's remarkable that these young actors got to have a voice in who plays them.
Mm-hmm. And you brought up a good point. Skarsgård, again, it's casting, man. Mm-hmm. I think they knew you're following up Tim Curry. Mm-hmm. Like that's arguably one of Tim Curry's most famous roles. Mm-hmm. You've got to find someone who can bring their A game. And man, Skarsgård is so great, and he's barely in it.
Yeah. Well, I thought actually they put him in it a lot, but when they put him in there, it was so unmemorable. You just didn't think you saw him. Like there were a lot of scenes because remember he's a lot during the daytime. They have him doing a lot of stuff, and with the so there's a lot of he's in it a lot more than I thought. But the thing is what's lost, I feel, is the tension. Because after a while of seeing a clown, if you see him in the daytime and he's doing stuff, and if he's doing goofy dancing stuff, the dread goes away. And then you can't buy anything else that's happening really because you're not really afraid.
Another thing you might be getting, they established, now spoiler free of course.
Spoiler free.
They established pretty early on a lot of these are illusions. So you as an audience are like, it's an illusion. So
what is it?
Yeah.
And there's a lot that makes me mad from the first one. Even the advancement of the timeline from the 50s to the 80s just makes me angry. So I got a feeling there's a lot I'm going to be annoyed with on this one. So.
Yeah, I think the struggle for me. So as I've seen it, I sat there and I had a lot of the same comments that my co-hosts have here. To me, I'm like, okay, you're following up It. That was really a good one. I thought that was one of the best ones I'd seen in a while since probably The Conjuring in terms of somebody that's taking a popular brand name and taking it somewhere with a good, competent director. So to see this, what hit my brain was, okay, this is a really big book, first of all. And you could tell by the runtime, the 2 hours and 50 minutes, that you could tell he was struggling with what do I keep in, what do I take out. And I think that's why the editing, for me, is the biggest problem. Because the reason why there's problems with the tone is because the editing isn't very good. Because at one point you're going, why are you letting this scene run on? Because it means nothing. But then over here, you cut this one short, and I need to know more about this over here.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
What have these kids been doing for 27 years? I don't really I get glimpses of a couple of them, but some of them nothing at all.
Plot lines. You'll keep when y'all see the movie, kind of keep a mental note of just like plot lines just get dropped. Just they don't get mentioned again. There's like a handful of them. And I was like, that's a major plot point you set up from the first movie, and you just never mention it again. And this is coming from me. I'm a big. I've mentioned earlier. I'm a big Stephen King fan. I haven't read many of his newer books because the man never stops writing. He never stops. But
even though he retired about 5 books ago, right?
Yeah, right. I do quite like him as a writer. Unfortunately, it was just one of those books. Stephen King's It was one of those books I never got to. Which funny story. I went to the librarian. It's like, hey, what Stephen King book have I not gotten yet so far? And she pulls out this giant, the book Bible. It. Yeah, it looks like a Bible. And I was like, I don't have time to read that. The new Final Fantasy video game comes out next week. I'm gonna skip that one.
And it's worth going back. Do it for the sake of. Just
I read it as
everyone has praised that's one of his best books.
14, 15.
It really is
a perfect time to read it.
But it is the same issue that Stephen King always has. He can't end a book.
That's right.
He just can't.
No,
All right.
that's funny. So with that, let's talk about Carlos. What else have you just seen, just briefly, and we'll find out what Mike has just seen as well. And I'll
Just
mention
seen
mine.
the movie I saw before that was Ready or Not, that horror movie. Yeah, very forgettable movie. I forgot it, 5 minutes after I left the theater. It was fine, fun watching it, but I wouldn't buy it or ever watch it again. Just one of those, kind of
I saw it and I really enjoyed it.
You did? Yeah.
What? Oh no!
No, I dug this one. It's a really well-paced 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's good. Fast-paced.
It gives you a heroine that you can get behind throughout the whole thing.
You're always trying to get behind the heroines. What's up with that?
Well, yeah, I'm behind on my heroin, so. But why do you think I got in here? No, the villains in here are comical, but it's well-placed sabotage. There's not really a lost moment in this.
Brody was good in it. I liked him. Anna Brody, from the OC.
Mm-hmm.
I do like it.
Andy McDowell
Andy
coming
McDowell.
back.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah,
See how much I forgot.
It's not one that you'll go back and repeat and watch, but it's a really fun way to spend 90 minutes watching a horror film, because even the horror, even the gore is
that's pretty
well placed.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was on my list. I was definitely gonna see that one, but it's
Wait for
you know how we kind of mentioned that they just kind of throw these movies out.
Yeah.
The show, there's next to no good show times right now, at least for me. There's like 2 or 3 shows a day, and then in really weird time slots, and I wasn't able to make it because I was interested in Ready or Not.
What about you, Mike? What have you just seen?
So for
other
me,
than just it.
yeah, right. So for me, I watched I'm almost done with it, the AMC television show, and we'll be probably discussing it later, The Terror, which is a really good show. It's based on a real world missing persons, I guess would be, of a ship that got lost in the Antarctic. This series seems like they're taking real world mysteries but adding supernatural horror elements to make a show around.
Okay.
This show is outstanding. I think it's a really good show so far. It's really well paced, and it's really about building dread. I'm loving it so far. And the other one is an older movie. I think it came out last year. Was Mission Impossible Fallout. We mentioned him earlier. I love Henry Cavill. That's one of those guys. I think he's very charismatic, good actor.
When he cocked his arm.
Dude, that's my favorite. I remember seeing that in the trailer.
That was a great fight scene in that bathroom, man. Oh my god.
Yeah, I remember seeing that in the trailer. I was like, I just want to see Henry Cavill throw haymakers for a whole movie. That movie was really good. It just suffered from, it was like, oh, well, these guys just win because they're the good guys. I really didn't feel too high stakes, but the villain was so good. I loved him. That was a very good movie. I can see why it was such a big hit.
You saw the one with Philip Seymour Hoffman, right?
Yep. I've seen them all.
I think that's my favorite villain of the Mission Impossible series.
Mission Impossible has a good, unlike the Bond films, unfortunately, Mission Impossible tends to have good villains for Ethan Hunt. We always have to have reasons for Tom Cruise to be running dramatically. And the Mission Impossible seems to have I don't think they get enough praise for their villains. They have good antagonists for Ethan. Something I don't think the Bond movies do too well until recently. I quite like that one. Other than that, it was a work week for me, so I didn't get a chance to watch it. Hence why I didn't get a chance to finish The Terror, and I'm loving it so far.
Now, Kazek, you told me before pre-show, that you actually saw something as well.
Yes, I did. I do want to give a shout out to the guys at the Alamo Draft House. Every year they do a horror mystery movie marathon called Dismember the Alamo. But in the summer they do a special kind of mini version of it, and I went to it this year, and it's called Camp Dismember. They showed 3 horror films that don't necessarily get their due. Usually relating about camp. Next year will be a film marathon about high school. This year they showed 3 films. The first film was Sleepaway Camp 3 with Pamela Springsteen. They also showed Dario Argento's Creepers, Jennifer Connelly's first film. Monkey biting chimpanzee. And they also showed the Final Terror, kind of an under the radar Joey Pantoliano. Adrian Zmed film, early Daryl Hannah, just basically films that don't get their due, getting their due in front of an audience that's really going to appreciate it. Maniacs who go to these crazy horror films. And again, the glory about these is that you don't know what you're getting. You spend your $20-25 and you get what you get. And they're all amazingly terrible films. And it's glorious to watch on a big screen with an audience that appreciates what horror really is.
And I love the sleepaway camp movies. Like you mentioned, I was like, I actually own that movie. That is he's right. That's the genius of horror. I think that's why I love the genre so much. Even when they're bad, with some exceptions, they are still fun. Yeah, there's something to enjoy them. And when they're great, man, you get some of the best, probably films you can imagine. It's a weird scale, but it's always enjoyable on the scale. But say for example, you get the big thing right now is superhero genre. You get a bad superhero movie, man, it's just bad. It's not even fun bad. And when you get a great superhero movie, very rarely is it a great film.
Yeah,
I think the horror genre has had more. There's a lot of misses, but they're fun. But when they hit, man, I would put them. Yeah. They would steamroll most superhero movies.
Yeah, that's fair.
But in October, like I said, they will be bringing Dismember the Alamo back on October 19th. When tickets go on sale, pick those up because that film festival sells out. And again, filling a theater with a bunch of horror fans who really appreciate what it is and invoking something terrible upon them is greatness. And not knowing what you're getting is even more fun because you're just going to get what you get. And it's amazing because with this particular film festival, they will do stuff that you don't normally see. Like they dragged out one of George Romero's classics last year about a vampire. I can't remember the name of the title.
Martin?
Martin.
Yeah,
And it's an amazing film. But by the same token, they'll open it up at Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So it's a whole gamut of great stuff. And that's the great thing about horror is that it runs the gamut from great to bad. And in there, you'll find something you enjoy.
Yeah, no, that's true. And now I'd say for my just seen it, the other piece that I've seen other than it too actually wasn't horror. It was actually a TV series that came out in 2014. I watched the first season. They only did one season of it. It was called Partners, and this is a comedy, and it's actually perfect because it has Martin Lawrence and Kelsey Grammer, and just those two guys together, like an odd couple, totally. And it's absolutely pretty funny TV. So what they are is they're Chicago lawyers, and Kelsey Grammer plays the elitist lawyer, and Martin Lawrence is the one with the conscience. He's the ethical lawyer. And so them two working in a firm together, you can see where that collision is going to happen because Kelsey's like, well, we got to check. And Martin Lawrence is going to be like, oh, but that woman, though, see what happened to her, right? And he does his traditional Martin Lawrence things. So they cover actually some pretty interesting topics. And I just turned it on. I just happened to find it. I think it was on Netflix or maybe it was Prime. And I started watching. I couldn't stop watching the next episode. Right away, right? Yeah, because it was smart and it was funny smart and it handled the things that are going on today. They didn't step away. From one.
I bet you it's some writers that have done other great shows.
I was watching a video about this. A lot of comedy because they were bringing up there hasn't been any comedy films.
Yeah,
and that they kind of go into this thing is like the writer's strike from 7 or 8 years ago kind of hurt studios buying comedies. A lot of them went to television. Right now, when I was mentioning this pre-show, we're in a golden age of television. Because he mentioned this to me. I watched it, the trailer for Partners. That looks incredible. That show, and I have never heard of it. There's so much good television right now. It's probably gonna be the next show I watch after Yellowstone and when I finish Terror. That's gonna probably be the next one on my list. There's just so much good television right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's written crazy smart. The things that Kelsey Grammer says is things you would exactly think he would say in his role. And what Martin says back to him is yep, that's exactly what someone said. You could tell it's not it's a very surfacey comedy where it's supposed to be just all off of slapstick stuff, which still can be funny, but it's actually dialogue smart. And so the way they go back and forth with their barbs, it's perfect. It's like the barbs in Hell or High Water when Jeff Bridges and the Indian guy Gil are going back and forth about Native history and Americans of the South.
I want to watch another good show with two good actors called Hap and Leonard. I think it's on Netflix too. It's very well written. It's a Southern set in the South, and it's a lot of. I think it was based on some pulp novels, but two lead characters are great. And another show called Terriers, if you like good writing.
Yeah,
that one
show,
I've actually
but
heard of. Yeah,
it just didn't last because nobody saw it, nobody watched it. But man, they're so good.
Well, you've seen that a lot now. I mean, look at how many shows Netflix canceled 20 shows because there's no human way. We've come a long way from where it was 7 or 8 it shows you got to watch, Lost. Everyone had to watch Game of Thrones. Now every streaming service has 5 legitimately good, not it's okay, legitimately great shows. No human can watch this much.
No, you can't consume this much, and then work and then sleep and everything else and do your family things. So
I have to pay for the streaming services so I can keep watching everything.
And that's why you watch Fulfillment, because we'll tell you which things you should watch so you don't waste time watching the stuff that you don't. So with all the varied taste that we have here just today, I'm sure we have something that everybody can like. Yeah. So let's get into that last segment, which is the reason for this show. Absolutely. My segment 3, there it is. We're going to talk about the greatest horror films of all time. I picked this category just so that we would all have a bit of frustration trying to figure out what goes in the top 5, because that's hard. It's like asking a parent to pick their favorite kid unless there's stepchildren involved. I've heard about that. So before we get into our top 5 greatest horror movies from you personally of all times, 2 questions to my friends here today. Number 1, what actually makes for a good horror movie?
Okay. I will say, and you mentioned this about partners, I think horror and comedy have 2 elements that go hand in hand. A lot of it's timing.
Yep.
Timing, building tension, tone, pacing. To me, I think it's harder to do a horror movie and a comedy because getting that timing down it's a balancing act. So for me, my 2, if I remember how the question worded, it was, what 2 elements do I think make a good horror movie?
Or just any element, but
any elements.
But you can take 2.
I think it's 2. I'm gonna say the biggest elements is suspense and tension, but those all funnel into the timing element. If I really break it down to its core, 'cause I just love these movies.
Right.
But if I really drill down to its core, I think it comes down to tension and drama. And I think the nature of the genre lends itself to those better than almost any other genre that I can imagine.
That's good. What
So
about
those
you?
are my 2 elements.
What about you, Carlos?
For me, what makes a good horror movie effective is characters. You got to care about the characters, no matter who they are. Even if you don't like the characters, they got to have something maybe relatable to make the horror effective. In a lot of horror films, there's a lot of violence, bloody gore. If something bad happens to somebody, something violent happens to somebody, you want to have some kind of care about that character, or else that violence doesn't mean anything. It's just senseless. And like you said, the suspense, good storytelling, in a horror movie is, for me, I prefer the kind of slow build horror movies with a great payoff at the end or a twist. I don't like so much the slasher type gimmicky horror films like Chucky, things like that. I prefer a good, well told story, with some realism. Some fantasy is fine in a horror film. A good example is like Crimson Peak or Pan's Labyrinth, the Guillermo del Toro. But otherwise, I like a real world story where something, shocking happens most of the time, and then you care about what happens to the people on the screen.
That's great. How about you, K. Zach?
For me, 2 things. Number 1, I think it's the ability for a horror film to take you out of your comfort zone.
Love it.
It is a real. It really has to get to you in some way. For those, because I know we've talked about The Exorcist on the show.
Sure.
And I know for you guys, it was a big one for you. It was never big for me, but then again, like I said, religion was never my thing. However, but you get me into something that, like body horror, bugs, or things like that. Things that really like get under your skin.
Mm-hmm.
A perfect example for me is they're sneaking up on you or coming up on you from the first Creep show. With the roaches, it kills me. That scene kills me every time. Mm-hmm. And it's the ability for a good horror film to get under your skin and take you out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And you take Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a film that has very little blood in it, but it's horrific to watch.
Mm-hmm. Stays with you too.
I'll bring up one of my favorites. It's not on my list, but The Strangers. The sound takes you out of that.
Yes.
The other thing that really gets me into a horror film is the smartest guy in the room. I love horror films where you have the smartest guy in the room versus the other smartest guy in the room. Even if that's Chucky, even if that's Freddy. I love those films where you have a really intelligent solution to a terrible problem. Because the idiots who go into the basement and the cabin in the woods or things like that, don't go. But no, it happens, and so you have something terrible that happens to them because of the smartest guy in the room, and I absolutely respect that. So that for me, that's what gets me into horror film.
I love it, and I'll just say, and you guys have touched on almost every one of them, so I'll try to pick something a little different, but I'm in 100% agreement with everything everyone said here. And I think, so I'll go director. I think how the director casts people who can show the dread on their face, which makes you buy the characterization. Right. And then if you string up all the tension that you talked about, and then if they're the smart person in the room, I think you can't just put somebody in the room and just go, now scream because he's going to come from the right, but you don't see it, all right? I like the directors that don't even tell you what it is because they want the reaction to be genuine when they film it, when you get really horrified.
Hitchcock was
great. Yes.
Hitchcock, the moment you said don't just scream, I was like, Hitchcock, you get that all the time.
And then I'll say the second thing is, please be creative. Don't show us a person getting hit by a car or having their head chopped off by an axe. Show it from a different angle if you're going to copy something that's already been done. But there's so many things that are actually terrifying, right? Even Dark Knight got it right by having Joker slam someone's head through a pencil and it goes through their eye, and that was just like, oh, that took an edge off of you. And even Dark Knight again with the guy that they hung and threw up against the wall while the mayor's talking, you don't expect it to come, and then boom, here's this body that has Batman but then a Joker face paint on, stuff you don't expect. So I'm like, be creative when you do it. Don't just do the stereotypical trope of the woman falls down, the guy stops, goes back to try to get her because she fell down, or a black cat crosses, or, oh, you see that raven? That means something bad's going to happen. That's an omen, right? You just be creative with it because there's so many things that are absolutely terrifying.
That's
right?
the whole premise of the Final Destination series. It's things you see every day. Oh, you didn't think that could probably kill you? I'm a big fan of that.
I'll never drive behind a big truck pulling a load anymore.
Because of that movie, I don't like water balls in my car because a character crashes because a water ball gets stuck under her brake, and that's stuck with me. Same thing with those big trucks.
I'll never get laser eye surgery.
Never.
So yeah, I agree. And I think you had nailed, like, characters are huge. I agree with everything y'all said here.
Yeah. Well, that's right. So let's do this now. Now that we've talked about that, here's the second question, then we're going to dive into our list. So the second question is jump scares. Sometimes the movies go way overboard. Sometimes they don't have enough. What's your thoughts on just jump scares in general?
Yeah, jump scares are fine, but when they're overused, it gets kind of annoying. You're just expecting it, and you know what's going to happen, and it just takes me out of the movie when it's just done for obvious scares.
It amuses me because the Conjuring movie is, because I think Hollywood is learning people do not like jump scares because it's easy. Like, these movies don't scare me on average, but my body does have to react to a jump scare because it's a loud noise. It amuses me, like the Tale of Two films. The Conjuring is really good about not using jump scares, but then its spin-offs are the worst examples of jump scares. The Nun, what was the other one? Annabelle movies, and there's one more I'm forgetting. La Llorona.
No,
I'm
it's horrible.
I'm the world's worst taste. They are the absolute worst about jump scares. I was like, your parent movie is a masterclass in it. What happened? So yeah, I despise them, but love them when they're done right. And again, you want to see an example of it. We were kind of mildly kind of picking on it, but It Chapter 2, I think it handles it does a handful of jump scares. And I was like, those are handled well. And it's they handle it with misdirection. It'll be like, hey, what's that over there? Oh, something's behind you may not have seen. So I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I will say when they're done right, I guess it's true for anything in existence. When it's done right, man, it's masterclass. And when it's done poorly, like they mostly are, it just annoys you.
Yeah, I think jump scares to me, as we get ready to jump into the list here, jump scares to me, you got more than 3 jump scares in a movie, I'm probably going to not be, I'm going to tune out at some point. Because at some point, if that's all you're leaning on, then that movie isn't made for me. Because that means you can't tell a creative story about how something can be horrible when there's so many horrible things that can happen all day long. So let's jump into it.
Just real quick, like I said, you told the Tale of Two Movies, I'll tell the Tale of Two Movies, and the fact that I thought It Chapter 1, whole bunch of jump scares in there with the CGI, completely ineffective. But you get a real perfectly set up jump scare, like the end of Carrie. That's the one that gets me every time. It's perfectly set up. The soft music, the Vaseline in the lens, then suddenly you see Carrie White burns in hell, you see the hand, and it gets you every single time.
You want to know another great iconic jump scare? Nightmare on Elm Street, the ending of that one. With the mother. Carrie was the one that was all shot backwards, right? Or is it Nightmare on Elm Street?
When she was walking
Nightmare on Elm Street was shot backwards.
Nightmare on Elm Street shot backwards. That one where the mom gets, a 30-year-old spoiler here, when she gets pulled through the door, boy, you don't see it coming. It's iconic. It's for a reason. That's one of those ones done right. And I agree with you 100% about Carrie. They're both just done perfectly.
All right, we got to get into the list, guys. We're running out of time.
Let's get through this.
We got 4 people, so we got to get through them all. Carlos, top 5 horror films of all time, and maybe you might give us a little bit about why that one.
Okay. Real quick, I'll go from 5 to 1.
Okay.
Number 5, The Others, Alejandro Amenabar. He's a Spanish director. It was filmed in Spain. Nicole Kidman, great performance, very effective ghost story and good storytelling, very atmospheric. I love this film. I can watch it like once a year. Number 4, The Descent, Neil Marshall, probably one of my favorite underrated horrors. A group of women get together every year, go on an adventure. This year they decided to go spelunking in a cave. And underneath, once they get down there, they kind of get trapped and lost, and then they discover a whole, almost civilization of these underground, creepy, naked, nasty dwellers. You know, so it's like horror.
It's a wonderfully nasty, gory film.
Yes, super gory, especially when one of them falls in the waist. It just like makes you want to throw up. Number 3, Alien, Ridley Scott. I love this one because it's kind of a combination of sci-fi and horror. The alien creature, the build-up to it, you hardly see it at first, and then, it gets going, and I love it. I love this movie. I Saw the Devil, number 2. It's a Korean film. Kim Ji-woon directed. The lead is a serial killer and an agent. They call him a secret agent. I guess he's just like a cop, a detective, and he's after this guy. And it's a game of cat and mouse. And man, it's dark and it is gory, and it has some amazing sequences. There's a scene in a car. It was just 3 people in it. And once you see this scene, you'll never forget it.
It is relentless pacing, and just the villain is terrifying.
And this is the guy that played Odai Soo in Old Boy. He's the villain in this one.
Okay.
Number 1, American Werewolf in London, John Landis, 1981. Great combination of horror and comedy. I love this film. David Naughton, perfectly cast. Everything, I mean, the special effects and everything was done practical. There was no CGI. The werewolf transformation is probably Rick Baker's one of the best work he's done. He also did The Thing. But yeah, I love that movie. I'll watch that probably once a year or two.
See, that's good. That's good. Y'all keep your notes, and y'all also come up with your list because we're going to do this. Mike, how about you? Horror Mike, the guy named Horror Mike.
Funny enough, my 1 and 2 easiest picks I've never changed on those. My other ones, my top 10, I fluctuate because there's so many good ones.
Sure.
So what you'll see quickly on my list is you want me to be attached to your movie or love it. Have your characters make decisions that are competent, that make common sense, because it makes me attach more to them when it's like, oh wow, I would have done that, and I would have been dead. I attach more to the characters. So for me, my number 5, Jaws. A lot of my movies are kind of classics because they're just good movies. Jaws, I love Jaws. I'm a big creature feature guy. Love monsters, and Jaws one of the most iconic ones. Bruce. My number 4, Candyman. That movie has stuck with me to this day. I think he's a great villain. Great. Tony Todd.
Yeah, that voice.
He's so he's so creepy. To this day, I still count how many times I say his name in reflective surfaces. I love him in that movie, and they're great characters. And he's one of the most sympathetic, in my opinion, horror movie villains. You really feel for him when you know his origins. My number 3, Night of the Living Dead. If only for one, it almost created the zombie genre. And 2, it has one of the most iconic endings in film history. I think it sticks with you long after you see the movie. My number 2, these were the easy ones for me. The Thing, John Carpenter, iconic body horror, just a masterpiece of a film. And my number 1, people sometimes argue with me on it, but Aliens by James Cameron. Some people argue it's an action movie. Man, I'm like, it's an action horror. I don't know why you can't be both. And that's almost my pure definition of
it's basically a slasher film, right?
You
basically
can
have these guys one by one. And
it's a slasher film, army, military movie. I mean, it mixes a lot of genres, and it does them all perfectly. I think it's just a great little movie. And Sigourney Weaver, to this day, in my opinion, is still one of the greatest fictional female characters because of that film.
Yeah, her and Sarah Connors. How about you, K-Zach?
All right, for me, I kind of went with the films that kind of affected me the most as far as a horror fan goes.
That works.
Number 5, The Lost Boys, a film that really made vampires cool again. Great soundtrack, fabulous, fantastic acting, just really the perfect 80s horror film. If you're gonna put a time capsule on it, it's really great. Number 4, Peter Jackson's Dead Alive, a.k.a. Brain Dead.
Yes.
One of the goriest films of all time. Fantastic comedy. Again, I will watch
kick ass for the Lord.
Great lines like that. Spectacular zombie makeup. And again, the horror does not stop in this film.
No.
I unleashed this on my friends a couple of years back, or actually last year, and getting to watch their reactions to this, like, oh God, it never stops, and then you break out the lawnmower. Number 3, The Fly with Jeff Goldblum.
Yes.
It is. It's some great body horror in this one. Jeff Goldblum puts in a spectacular performance. And again, just like the nightmare of watching this guy deteriorate, and the wonderful scares in it. It's a really, really just perfect horror film.
Yes.
Number 2 for me, this one. Was an easy give. Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. Sam Raimi's horror comedy classic. It really is just. I love horror comedy, and it is
It's an iconic one.
It's a funny film. It's a nonstop cartoon, but also it is really a great horror film. You have tremendous monsters, great hero in Bruce Campbell, and again, it's just one of those horror films that keeps you on your toes from slow pace to everything. Finally, my number 1, without question, is going to be An American Werewolf in London. I'm with you on this one, Carlos. Rick Baker's creature effects, David Naughton's comedy. Of course, you have that iconic werewolf puppet. Just watching the behind the scenes is phenomenal. And again, it is the film that Rick Baker got an Academy Award category created for him to honor him for this film. It really is just a spectacular horror film. The makeup, the pacing, everything in it is just spectacular.
Yeah, no, so that's very good. I like those, and this was tough too because I like so many as well now as someone who's only more recently dived back into them because I used to like them at one point, then I kind of fell away. So my list is kind of a mixture of some new and then with certainly some classics as well. But at number 5 for me was The Conjuring. That movie was one of the movies that told me I can start watching horror movies again because I thought that James Wan did a great job at telling that story. It wasn't as predictable as some of these films can sometimes get, and I cared about the characters, like what you said. So that team of Ed and Lauren, that go out and they're always looking at, and some of that being based off of some true stuff. Yeah, so that also pulls me in when there's some sort of realism to it. So I thought that was great. So I ended up taking that more current one and put it at number 5. Number 4, I still can't get over Psycho, and it's probably because of the Bates Motel. That series that was on just 2 years ago where Laura Farmiga got an award for her acting as playing that. That was so well realized, the TV show that they did on AMC, but it only got its start because of the real Psycho. And I think Psycho showing Alfred Hitchcock just showing the psyche of people and how just some things like the mom relationship with the kid and how that can be kind of perverted and some other things and just in black and white. There's something about black and whites when you're watching them, right, for the aesthetic. So I have to go Psycho, number 4.
Scared our generation out of the shower for years.
It certainly did. And then 3, Rosemary's Baby. There was so much talk about this. It came out in 1968, the year I was born. But Mia Farrow, this is one of her best roles. And just this movie, not because it's so greatly put together, but because of the creative thought behind what could be scary in terms of a woman having a baby, like the things that could be wrong, that could go bad, that could be horribly wrong, and so
just a very generic setting, an apartment building, just neighbors and stuff. And
absolutely,
just a relationship. And I think it's one of Polanski's best movies.
I think so too. And that slow burn here, where you talked about it. If you don't like slow burns, you won't like Rosemary's Baby. But if you do, it pays off in dividends.
Oh my God,
certainly.
It's always my final proof of Polanski being a great. Love him or hate him, he's not a great person, but you can't deny his talent. He's almost the definition of separating art from artists. He's so talented. That was such a great film.
And then number 1 and 2 are probably some obvious ones, but 2, The Thing. I certainly love the body horror that's in that, and I thought that was just well crafted.
John Carpenter's classic, man.
Absolutely.
Keith David, Kurt Russell, man. Oh, they're great in that movie, man.
And number 1, I had to go with The Shining, and I know that might be a number 1 pick on many people's lists, but the reason for me is obviously Stanley Kubrick then taking a Stephen King story. That's one big headline. But the other big headline is, how crazy is Jack Nicholson, right? His performance, like his lines. This is probably one of the most quoted of horror films, and people know exactly what you're talking about when you go, "Here's Johnny." Yep. Everybody knows what that is. But when he was walking up the stairs, and it gives me these, as I watch it now, it always makes me think of him playing Joker and Batman. I'm like, this is what they saw in order to see that Jack Nicholson could do this. Because if you watch him, like when he walks up the stairs and he goes, "Oh, but you cut me off, and now I just want to bash your head in." Yep. And the way he said it, and the passion, and as he was walking up the stairs, and that glazed, crazy look in his eyes, you were just like, oh my God, this is a one-man tour de force here.
My favorite scenes in that movie are the scenes of him in the bar talking to, to the bartender. I love those scenes.
Isn't this? I mean, it's such.
It's just a conversation, but it's so effective. It goes on real long.
Yes,
but man, it's just so perfectly crafted. Kubrick was a genius.
Between that, Joker and Batman, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, you can make a very good argument of Jack Nicholson being one of the top character actors of all time. Like, I love Shining. I also love the Simpsons parody of it just as much. I mean, it's such an iconic movie. I agree with that. Listen, it's actually, Shining's always in my top 10. That's why I'm excited for Dr. Sleepless.
And if you talk about performances where the director catches them offhand, Shelley Duvall.
Yes,
you feel for her throughout this whole movie. Her exhaustion is blatant, and I mean, when you hear the stories about what Stanley Kubrick put her through for this film,
Yeah.
you know just how beat up she is.
Yeah.
And isn't it amazing? Because if the stories were leaked, because the kid said it. He said the kid thought he was filming a family movie. Stanley Kubrick went out of his way to make sure that kid did not know he was in a. He made sure he didn't know. He didn't want to be scared or traumatized.
Yeah.
That kid never saw any of the horrifying stuff. I think that's great. That's hilarious.
Even the small parts, the Scatman Crothers, the guy who interviews him, everybody's just pitch perfect casting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, watch it. There's a room. It's a documentary called Room 237. 237.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That is a masterclass documentary where you realize how much Kubrick pretty much went insane doing this movie. Because I've seen the movie like 20 plus times, and I didn't even realize the floor plan makes no sense purposely.
Oh yeah,
there are rooms that don't exist if you look at the outside of the building. I was like, that's incredible.
Talked about that a couple episodes ago.
That's pretty key. So here's what we're going to do. We're running there towards the end. I'm going to have my guests tell you how they can find you, but just before that, I want to give a couple shout outs. So shout outs, Carlos, who you want to shout out to?
Just my kids and Mad Mel.
Absolutely great. Mike, who you want to shout out to that might be watching?
My mom and dad. My dad's getting married soon, so hey, Dad. He'll probably be watching this recorded for sure.
All right, awesome. How about you, KZ?
I do want to shout out the guys at the Rancourt Pit, who, of course, you'll be seeing here next week for the third Sunday. You'll be seeing the Rancourt Pit and, I believe, Isle of Toys. So do check that out here. And, of course, the guys at Alamo Draft House for bringing us things like AGFA and Dismember the Alamo.
Awesome. And I want to shout out to Michael Paul, who's been watching and commenting, and also Mad Mel as well. We appreciate that. And any of you guys, if you know this is a great secret, don't keep it to yourself. Tell all your friends, because we really get a little deeper than just talking about just the pop films. We get into it, as you can tell. We get pretty granular about it, and some of us like that kind of stuff, the stuff that you don't always hear. So as a special feature, next time we get together, just in 2 weeks, on the 22nd, we thought if we're going to talk about horror, then we can't talk just about horror without talking about villains. So think about your favorite villains out there, get your list together, and then you can compare them with ours. And we're going to invite Mike back if he can get back here. If Mike can come back, best. We'll have him back, and we're going to talk about the greatest movie villains and maybe even TV villains as well, because that's the case. So, Carlos, if people are looking to try to find out more about the Film Samurai, where will they go?
You can find me on Twitter at Film Samurai and Facebook at Film Samurai.
Love it. Horror Mike, how can people find you on the line?
I'm on Instagram, Mike JC Art, and you can also I work with Keith's Comics, so look up Keith's Comics on Facebook.
How about you, Zach?
You can find me every here on Talk Nerdy to Me Sunday here on DallasCenter.com, including you can find me on, of course, Rancourt Pit, Isle of Toys, Figments, the Unexplained Mysteries podcast, and you can find me here on the show coming up right after this, The Vortex of Doom, your laugh track to the apocalypse, right here on DallasOnAir.com.
That's right, and it's for me, the Vegabomber. You can find me on YouTube. You can under Vegabomber, also on Facebook, the Vegabomber page, Instagram, Twitter, Vegabomber, same name. See, there's a theme playing here. That's exactly what that is. And I think that's it. So go ahead and kick out that outro music, and we'll just pretend to sit here and talk about stuff.
This is DallasOnAir.com.